Good morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. Who could complain? Who could complain on a day like today? Not me. It's not me. Folks are coming in. Happy to see it. Happy to see it. Always that delay, Always the delay. So hope everyone had a good Canada Day yesterday. Taking a preemptive sip of coffee. I woke up very early this morning at like 2. But I managed to go back to bed, and I woke up at around 5. And I got a nice picture of the sunrise, as I normally do. You'll see it. You'll see my sunrise picture in a few minutes. Once I see that the chat is operational. Bitcoin Deb, good morning, Nolan and crew. Being in my 50s, I gotta say this is the craziest year I've ever witnessed. I told you it was going to be, Bitcoin Deb. I told you. That's what I told you. I told you it was going to be 2024. It's not going to stop. 2024 getting more interesting, I promise. Johnny Midas, good morning. You're the best. Thanks, Johnny Midas. You beat me. I've been up since 4:30, and I thought that was crazy early. No, I like to get up early, Bitcoin Deb. Welcome back, Lightning Ven says. Indeed. Happy British North American Act today, man says. The sun rises, Bitcoin runs every day. Indeed, I got a nice picture of that sun rising today. Indeed, I do. Yeah, Lightning Vend, there, because it's the holidays, I think it's going to be a bit of this for a little while. I know you guys have been patient since April when my dad died, and schedules have been not exactly 100% predictable since then. I think it will stay not exactly 100% predictable for at least another month. I have a lot of travel coming up. But if you guys are still showing up to the slightly irregular summer schedule, then I'm going to keep doing them, I'm going to keep coming. All right, everyone, let's acknowledge, right? We've got a major sunrise on our hands. It happened. The sun happened. It's a real thing. We had a sunrise this morning, and Bitcoin's running, everyone. We're doing great. We're doing awesome. All that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. Love it. A perfect way to start the day. Sun is up, Crypto Joe. One says, hope you're doing well, Crypto Joe. Hope you're doing well. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Moscow time. What's the fakest news today? Still hot. We still have some hot troubles, right? Where is it hot, though? We're finding out that the heat is this is from the Washington Post. Heat, they say, is the deadliest form of extreme weather. Did you know that? Heat is the deadliest form. Why are fatalities so hard to track, but they can't measure it? Why not? They don't know. As summer begins in the United States, some local officials and health experts are sounding the alarm about the dangers of extreme heats, whose effects can be deadly but hard to trace. This one's great. So, soaring global temperatures have accelerated the life cycle. So, I told you it's hot and it's getting more dangerous, right? Just like they said, the hot is the most dangerous. It's the most dangerous. Even I've seen some people say that the cold kills more people, but they're probably looking at fake science. They're not looking at the real science. I'm sure of it. Even though I've lived in minus 100 degrees, which I thought was pretty dangerous. They say there's more dangerous out there. But here's how the heat is getting even more dangerous, guys. The Washington Post saying soaring global temperatures have accelerated the life cycles and expanded the ranges of the mosquitoes that carry dengue. So if it's hot, there's going to be mosquitoes, and then you're going to get the dengue, helping spread the virus to roughly 1 in every 800 people on the planet in the last 6 months alone. They're not following up on the Bill Gates mosquito line of inquiry. That's a stupid conspiracy theory, you idiots, okay? It's definitely the soaring heat. Nothing to do with genetically modified mosquitoes being released. Not related, Okay, not related. That's what the news is telling me. They're not related. Okay, I don't know what to tell you. So this one's good too. We got the dangerous dengue, right? But we've also got the hurricanes. Don't forget the hurricanes. They're here. They're getting worse and worse. And this is what they found out. Are they really worse? No. That wasn't true. Are they early? No. Here's what it is. Here's what this makes the hurricane that just missed my home in Barbados yesterday. I was getting pictures from my house and my neighbors and all my local friends. It was really blowing a lot there. They just missed it, right? They just missed it. But here's what we find out. Here's what was unique about the storm, okay? They say that this is from the Washington Post. There is no precedent for a storm to intensify this quickly, nor reach this strength in this part of the ocean in June. And they say the records date from 1851. All right, so yes, let us recall the time in 1851 where they put out boats. Were they measuring the hurricanes? No. They were measuring the rate of increase of the hurricanes. That's totally credible. Since 1851, we know every year they send out a bunch of boats, and the boats go out into the Atlantic Ocean, and they measure the storms when they start, and then they fall. You didn't know this. They only had wind back then, but good thing there was a hurricane because it blew the sail ship. It blew the boat, right? Some of them had engines. And what they did was they just stayed with the storm and they measured it. Okay. And they've been doing it every storm since 1851. They know exactly how quickly they go forward and increase in pace. Since 1851, the Washington Post is telling you they know about the pace of increase of every storm since 1851. I believe them. And this is how they do it. They're telling us here, right? This is how they're telling us they do it. This looks totally legit to me. Okay, this is the same Washington Post. They wrote this yesterday. How bad will hurricanes get? Now that they've been measuring their rate of increase since 1851 and they know exactly the speed of them, right? They know exactly how, this isn't the fastest, it's not the earliest, it's the most accelerating. It accelerated the fastest because they know about the acceleration of the hurricanes. They measure that. Come on, guys. How do they know? The same newspaper telling us here, Washington Post, how bad will hurricanes get? Scientists look for answers in mud. Their work suggests oceans are capable of producing hurricane seasons far more relentless than anything modern society has seen so far. So what they did was, okay, I got it all wrong. They didn't measure the storm since 1850. They looked at the mud. The mud. It's not the same as the acorns that they used to tell you what temperature it was in Colorado 3,000 years ago or 3 million years ago, right? You know, when they take the acorns and they're like, what was the temperature 2 million years ago? They shake the acorn and then they put it in some science and then that out comes the temperature in Celsius, right? Whoa, it's the same thing. They just look in the mud and they go, oh, this hurricane increased faster in 1851 than this year. So now we know. Thank you, Washington Post. They're looking in the mud. That's what we need to know. But don't worry, guys. These hurricanes are going to stop. Wait till you hear about what we got in store for them. Wait until you hear what we're going to do to them hurricanes, okay? The hurricanes are not going to make it past this because in Denmark, everyone, in Denmark, the dairy farmers in Denmark will have to pay an annual tax of 672 krona. The krona is their money, and it's worth about $80. So $80, 80 US dollars per cow due to the planet heating emissions they generate. It is the world's first carbon tax on agriculture. So come on. What are these hurricanes going to do when they hear about this? We're measuring the mud. We know how fast they're accelerating. We are going to put the brakes on them with these cow burps and cow fart taxes. It's going to pay for everything we need. It's going to be done. It's going to be over. And now, you know, you hear this is from Denmark, right? And now they got the cows in Denmark that are farting and burping too much, but now there's a tax on them. But guess what? There's a new option too. That's not all they have in Denmark. Okay, the Danish have an even better plan because I don't know if you heard, Denmark now has the richest, most valuable company in Europe. It's the Ozempic, right? That's from Denmark. The same place where they're giving the cows the burps and the farts and the muzzles and the taxes. They've also solved obesity. And guess what they can do with those cows? Guess what? The New York Post letting us know, Hefty Pets, this is from today, Hefty Pets may benefit from Ozempic-style drugs. Experts say, ba-bum-ba, experts. So guess what? They might not even have to pay all those taxes on the cows. So don't be so heartless against all those people, right? They might just be able to put those cows on some Ozempic, and maybe they won't fart so much because they won't want to eat so much grass, and then they'll be perfect, right? So the Ozempic in Denmark, that's where it's from. That's where the Ozempic is from. In America, they're saying we got to give the Ozempic to our animals, but there's a perfect solution waiting for us, right? You want to dodge some cow fart and cow burp taxes, and you're from Denmark, give them the Ozempic. Do it. I want Ozempic fed cows. You stupid Americans, you're like, I'm into grass-fed beef. Or no. I'm into grass not eating because my cows are on Ozempic. That's much better. They don't fart. It's so good. The steaks are a little smaller. Okay, that's okay. It's got Ozempic in the meat. So you'll eat it and you won't want, you're going to lose your appetite. So you only eat a little bit of steak, right? They're solving all of our problems at once. I'm so happy. I'm so happy about this. Meanwhile, this is just funny to read. The CDC came out with a recommendation yesterday. Experts say, ba-bum-ba. What did the experts say yesterday? CDC recommends everyone ages 6 months and older receive an updated 2024-2025 COVID-19 vaccine to protect against the potentially serious outcomes of COVID-19 this fall and winter, whether or not they have ever previously been vaccinated with a COVID-19 vaccine. I thought they were banned. What is going on here? I thought they got banned. Okay, this is great. This is from the Quartz. Quartz? You want to know what Quartz is up to, guys? So I had to go back a few days for this one. This is everything you needed to know on Friday yesterday, but related to Friday. Okay, so this is what they said. President Joe Biden wasn't the only apparent loser of Thursday night's debate. Donald Trump's Trump Media and Technology Group, the company behind the former president's far-right social media site, Truth Social, fell 10.9%. But it's still up over 18% on the week. So they're equivocating here. Quartz is saying that Trump's stock on his Truth Social was only up 10% on the week. So he was a loser. Just like Biden. Just the same. They're the same. Okay, these ones are great. So everyone yesterday with the Chevron doctrine coming down and then Trump's immunity coming down, we're going to be talking about the Supreme Court, of course. So we're going to be talking about that. But everyone is really having a mental health crisis today over at MSNBC and the Washington Post. It's a lot of fun. If you guys were a little bored or something and you just want to watch some people spaz out for a while, go check out the fake news today, because the fake news they're not doing so great, right? They're showing some signs of cracking. So here's some of the headlines that they came up with today after Trump's immunity, right? So Jennifer Rubin, we're going to start a little slowly. The court serves up immunity. The threat of an autocratic presidency soars. The threat of it soars. Supreme Court's Trump immunity ruling poses risk for democracy. Experts say, Experts say the court's decision raised fears that a future president will be able to act with impunity because official acts of the president have been deemed off limits from prosecution. Rachel Maddow, by the way, she has a Stormy Daniels interview tonight, which is going to be great. But Rachel Maddow called the ruling, this is a death squad ruling. It's a death squad ruling. Okay. He's a king now, they say. He's a king, vested with the powers of a king. Joy Reid had a really good response. She forgot to put her Trump wig on, so the pictures are not flattering of her. But this is her saying that it doesn't matter, even if Biden has a stroke and can't speak, it doesn't matter. She doesn't care about his age. She doesn't care about any of it. Sorry. I mean, the suicides might begin today, frankly. I don't know. She's not doing so great. So she had a tough time, right? She said, I don't care about Biden's age or infirmity. He can be rolled around in a wheelchair. She doesn't care. Donald J. Trump can't win. All right. And then you've got Chris Hayes. He's all concerned. You got all the journalists. We're all like this. What's happening? We have a dictatorship. We have a dictatorship. This one's good too. I've said before, if we have some kind of a Louvre, like some kind of a museum of fake news one day, where we can put up amazing headlines. I don't even know if this one's real, so I don't know. Okay, but this is what they're saying. This is what people are saying, and it could be fake. I can't tell the difference anymore. I don't know. Okay. I tried, but this is an actual headline. To serve his country, President Biden should drone strike Donald Trump. Now, I don't know if it's true. I just don't. I can't tell. I can't tell you if it's new or fake or real. That's the world we live in. Okay, that's something that might be real, might not be. I'm not sure. We're just gonna have to go with it, guys. We're just gonna have to go with it. All right. So indeed, they should drone strike him. Of course, Phil Bump has some stuff to say. I don't know if it's true, guys. I just don't know. Okay, I'm trying to figure it out, but it was too nice to see to not share. So again, I might be sharing actual fake news here. Okay, this is like an April 1st situation. A lot of people shared this, and they said it was real. Okay, so I don't know. I don't know if it's real. I can't tell, which is kind of the point, right? That's the world we live in. Indeed, Phil Bump has the final word on it. He says, the Biden dictatorship? That's what Phil Bump, the Biden dictatorship? What? Oh, the right, he says, reframes the threat to democracy. Yes, another one too, where we didn't get into this one. So Phil Bump's only response to the debate the other day, analysis by Phil Bump. And he says, what Trump said with his very fine people comments versus what he meant. So now we're getting back into Phil Bump's amazing mind reading abilities. He's one of the best mind readers I've ever. I just don't understand why he's not richer and still has to work for the Washington Post. I mean, he works for like a futurist in Jeff Bezos. I'm surprised he didn't go up to Jeff Bezos and say, Jeff, I can read people's minds. I know what they're thinking. You got to give me a better job than writing analysis by Phil Bump every day, 3 times a day. I mean, maybe he's okay at writing. Maybe it's just really easy to. Maybe he loves his job. But I mean, if I could mind read like Phil Bump, I would be trying to tell Jeff Bezos, Jeff, we can be so much more. You want your spaceships to go faster than Elon Musk's? I can mind read Elon Musk. You need to know what they're doing over at SpaceX. Just ask me, okay? I'm Phil Bump. I can read minds, including the president's. This is what he said, right? If you read the article, he says, the reason that the fine people lingers over Trump is that it is shorthand for his eagerness to downplay the explicit pro-Trump white nationalist origins of a protest that led to a woman being killed. Obviously, it's his eagerness, guys, right? So, there it is, guys. And he goes with the same one. His whole explanation of this article about what he meant, about what Trump meant was, we have never been able to find a very fine person who went to the thing. There were none. Thousands of people there. Not one of them was good. They're all white nationalists. That's his point. He's going back to the original point, right? The original hoax scam, right? So that's exactly what they said, right? He was not exonerated in assigning blame for the brawling thing. He was not exonerated for suggesting the counter pressures, blah, 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 blah. It's just same old Phil Bump nonsense. All right. That's what we got for Moscow time today. Yeah, they actually said drone strike escape hatch. But again, I just don't know if it's true. I just don't know. The Chevron case is a real eye-opener. We're going to be talking about it. Bitcoin Deb, Ozempic beef coming to a grocery store near you. Bitcoin Deb, these fearmonger weather nuts just remind me of that annoying one-upper neighbor I used to have, in one ear and out the other. Yeah, my I have a friend who came up with a really good nickname for those. He used to call people like that Lambos. He used to call them Lambo. He'd nickname them, "You're a Lambo." And what Lambo was used for was anyone who had a story about whatever, right? Oh, my friend has a new Tesla and I went for a fun ride in it, right? And we did the auto driving. So this is the kind of guy who will always have a better story about the time they were in a car that was nice, right? So Lambo. Anyway, that was that was how we used to use it. So let's talk about all the court cases and what's going on. Oh no, I'll go back to that. I thought I had a different one here. Yeah, well, I'll come back to that in a second. So we'll talk about all the court cases and what's going on with the court cases. And so we've had a few that were properly and accurately predicted here on the breakup, right? We told you that Chevron and Jarkissi, the two that, well, one of them in particular, Jarkissi, related to the SEC, but has wider implications for all of the judges and enforcement branches within executive branch agencies, in particular the SEC. I don't know why everyone just doesn't ignore SEC enforcement stuff as of this week. There's been a few things that have been pushed forward with the SEC and enforcement. Silvergate Bank, I think they tried to talk to them about something, or they're doing something with them in the courts. So all of these folks that are now getting threatened with lawsuits against the SEC, I think they can ignore them, but I don't know. I'm not a lawyer exactly on all this stuff. But if you add what happened with Jarkissi, just to reiterate, is the idea that the separation of powers, the judiciary and the executive branch, have been infringed by putting in quasi-judges or administrative judges inside of executive branch agencies like the SEC. So what the argument of Jarkissi is that it's okay for the SEC to create rules, but it is unconstitutional for them to enforce the rules. Now you'll say, why can't they enforce the rules? The reason is just because things become too complicated when you don't separate those powers. When you have judges and the rule makers working for the same outfit, what ends up happening is they'll become too niche, too specific, and it will run away from any lay person from trying to understand it, even a lay judge. So the argument was that lay judges couldn't understand securities law because of the estrangement from reality specialized enforcement courts ended up bringing to the situation, right? Because it became so specific and so detailed. You had to hire the brain surgeons of law, the securities lawyers, and they had to deal with a very complicated field of securities law, none of which should have been the case. Securities law should never have been that complicated. It became complicated because the judges became so specialized, because the rule makers were so specialized that none of the actual legal principles ever applied anymore. And that was a major problem. So this is something that I had been paying attention to for a long time, because it was one of the only things I was decent at law school was administrative and constitutional law. So this is one that I was able to really understand very quickly years ago, before it was even a major issue. Now, I understand it because I'm from Canada. We study both civil and common law. In this system, this is exactly how the civil law system would work, as far as the judges being a part of the executive branch. That's just how Napoleonic Code legal systems operate. And that was always something that I admired and preferred about the English system, is that we didn't have this world like that. Now, it's obvious. The reason why I was already insulted by it, let's say, is because I used to live in France. I went to college in France. I went to a fancy political science school. Everybody there had to pass a very difficult exam to get in, and not me, them. I was an exchange student, so the locals had to do that. So, but you meet all these really, smart, successful, rich locals, because the parents had to be sort of engaged enough to get them into those schools in the first place. And what I learned is, and I had no idea, right? Before I learned about all these differences, I had no idea. They're judges in France from the civil law system. That's their first job. They're just judges. They just finish school and they go become a judge. Like that, they don't practice as a lawyer first. That's an American thing. Even in Napoleonic law in Quebec, because judges are appointed by our political system, which is more British in design, right? It's very much the Westminster system of government, right? Constitutional monarchies. That's what we have in Canada. And because of that, judge appointment still goes by the common law, the English legal system, like America. So it's different politicians that put them in there, and that's what they do, right? So that's how it's been working for a long time. And in Quebec, we never really had the same situation that they have in Europe. But indeed, in Europe, there'll be a guy who becomes a judge of whatever court because he's highly specialized, and because he got the job out of school. He did the right education and got the job. I knew people whose parents were judges. I knew people who were set to become judges when they were finished school, which was just hilarious to me. When you compare it to what goes on in America, like not just nominations, but elections for judges regularly, it's a completely different system, right? So the argument with the Jarkissi case was always that you should not have been able to have judges sitting with the executive branch because of what I just said was a weakness of the civil law system. Things become too based on experts and never based on reality, right? So what you have in with the Jarkissi case is basically America going back to its actual common law roots, where the separation of powers were obvious, right? But the Chevron case is even more amazing. The Chevron case was this one all about deference to the federal authority when rules were never written in the first place. And that got taken away yesterday. So basically in the last week, the predicate to do what Milei has done to Argentina has now come to America. And I've been telling you for 2 years that this would happen. I've been telling you for 2 years that by the 2024 election, you would have a roadmap, a legal roadmap to gut the federal government in the United States. And that's what I said made everything that Vivek was talking about so credible, right? That Vivek, who has been talking about gutting the federal government, turning off almost every department, every institution. And I've even loved the sort of disrespectful way he's been talking about doing it, right? We're just going to do it by alphabetical order or social security number, like completely unbiased, just random, right? Just fire all these people randomly because the whole thing is too much and is a mistake. So the Chevron case gives us an even clearer example of that, right? So here, I'll read a little bit. There was an article in Bitcoin Magazine that's all about how this stuff works, right? So the original Chevron case was all based on statutory ambiguities, right? And what they did was when there was an ambiguity, they automatically delegated authority to the federal government. So here's someone who broke this down very simply. Let me see if I have their name. I got this out of Noster. I'm just trying to see who actually shared it. Anyway, the person, wherever this came from, they were sharing the document from Bitcoin Magazine, and we're sharing it on Noster. But here's what they say, right? For those who don't understand what Chevron deference is and why SCOTUS ended it, so the Supreme Court of the United States of America, here's the long and short of it. A family fishing company, Loper Bright Enterprises, was being driven out of business because they couldn't afford the $700 a day they were being charged by the National Marine Fisheries Service to monitor their company. The thing is, federal law doesn't authorize the National Marine Fisheries Service to charge businesses for this. They just decided to start doing it in 2013. Why did they think they could get away with just charging people without any legal authorization? Because in 1984, in the Chevron decision, the Supreme Court decided that regulatory agencies were the experts in their field and that the courts should just defer to their interpretation of the law. So this was a law that helped give a excuse to experts to land grab and take more power. In the same way that having quasi-judges or administrative judges inside of the executive branch was also just a way to take more power and put it into the administrative state. So he keeps going here, right? That empowered experts in their field, and the courts should just defer to their interpretation of the law. It was the same with securities law, right? The civil courts were told, you stupid judges, you're just like your normal courts. You're not a specialized court. The securities court is so much smarter than you idiots, right? That was the argument. So for the past 40 years, federal agencies have been able to interpret laws to mean whatever they want, and the courts had to just go with it. It was called Chevron deference, and it put bureaucrats in charge of the country. It's how the OHSA was able to decide that everyone who worked for a large company had to get the job or be fired. No law gave them that authority. They just made it up. It's how the ATF was able to decide a piece of plastic was a machine gun. That's the bump stock stuff, I think. It's how and the bump stock thing was one of the dumbest. This is what happens when you give it to experts. Everybody knows who understands guns that bump stocks are like the worst thing for the awful mass shootings, right? Because the recoil on them makes them so you can't just fire. It's not that simple, right? The bump stocks are like the worst tool you could have. if that was what your mind was set on, right? So it was an emotional ban. It made no sense. Now I'm not a bump stock user, so I don't really know. I just heard what people were saying. But indeed, that's what they're saying here, that these pieces of plastic turned a normal gun into a useless machine gun, but a machine gun nevertheless. It's how the NCRS was able to decide that a small puddle was protected wetlands. It's how out-of-control agencies have been able to create rules out of thin air and force you to comply, and the courts had to simply defer to them because they were the experts. And now, I don't like thinking in analogies, right? It's usually a weakness when you think in analogies, but because this is a law that creates an analogous deployment throughout the federal government, thinking in analogies is not such a bad exercise, because that's the point. The point of a lot of these precedent ruling things is that every analogy now has to apply to it. So normally I would say to you, if I'm trying to convince you by using an analogy, I'm probably, check your wallet, like I'm scamming you, right? So normally, if I'm using an analogy to try to persuade you, be careful. I'm usually doing it to bend because something doesn't fit, right? We all do it, okay? So it's when you do it, it's because you're basically having cognitive dissonance and you're out of real arguments. So look at this analogy; it works, right? It's what I meant. So be careful of that. From me and from others and from everyone in the world, right? It's a defense mechanism more than anything to think in analogies. Unclear thinkers use it a lot, so that's why I'm telling you I try not to do it, but you do. But here's the analogy, right? Imagine if your local police could just arrest you for any reason and no judge or jury was allowed to determine if you'd actually committed a crime or not. Just off to jail you go. That's what Chevron deference was. It was not only blatantly unconstitutional, it caused immeasurable harm to everyone. Thankfully, it's now gone. We haven't even begun to feel the effects of this decision in the courts. It will be used for years to come to roll back federal agencies, and we'll be better off for it. So this is not going to stop, right? This is not going to stop. The Supreme Court now getting impeached today, apparently, because Jose Salgado says, don't scam. I'm not going to scam you. There's no scams. But just think about it, right? Just think about it. This is Stephen Becklos saying the arrogance. This is one of these anti-Trump people who's got TDS. The arrogance of the Supreme Court, he wrote, to think that it knows better how to rule our lives than actual experts is infuriating, right? That's what he says. It's infuriating. Now, it might be true. It's infuriating, but the truth is this stuff was never designed to be our masters anyway, that we accidentally ended up here. And by accidentally ending up here, by accidentally giving powers to the federal agency, we just perpetuated what I've been talking about for a while, which is everything we did to build to win World War II, the bureaucracy, the war machine, we never shut it off. And what we created was this incredible top-down structure, right? We created this incredible top-down structure. And we gave a ton of power to the president. That's where this whole title of leader of the free world comes from, the fake presidential title. No one ever asked the president to be the leader of the free world, right? Now they're calling the president a king in all these fake articles, right? About what happened yesterday, the Supreme Court, the reason why they're trying to now impeach the Supreme Court, right? So I warned you to get more of these destroy the court articles. Now they're going to go through the roof, all right? Through the roof. You're going to see way more of these, right? Aren't the Supreme Court judges law experts? Yeah, but the system that we agreed to, right? The system that everybody agreed to in the separation of powers was there be a hierarchy in courts, and that the only... So here's a mistake that a lot of people ended up getting. The ways you can make law, right? The ways you can make law in America are actually two, right? You can go to Congress. Well, I guess it's three in a sense. You've got the president's executive powers, right? So laws can come into effect because the executive branch says, here's a law. And there's a few powers within that envelope. The president is not powerless, right? The president has powers in the toolbox. And then, of course, the normal, typical way laws are made by Congress. But it was always acknowledged there was a third way, right? Which is court precedent. The Supreme Court saying this or that, according to the rules of the Constitution, is law. Here's the problem. We started to imagine that every judge could make law. That's not the way it was set up. All the other judges are more or less subordinate to what the Supreme Court says, indeed as experts, but that's why you put up 9 of them. That's why they vote. That's why it's 5-4 decisions. And it's not an appeals court. We think of it as an appeals court. It's not. It's a law-making court. So what goes to it is usually on appeal because the logic doesn't hold and they need to have a precedent. They need to have something in the ground that says this is the way it's going to be from now on. But truthfully, in the actual way it works, there's only a handful of actual common law judges that are supposed to be making law. The lower courts guys are not supposed to be doing that, but we've lost all track of that. That's like a fantasy world now. So, but now they're experts, so you can say they're experts, but it's within a system that everybody agreed to originally, which is there is this hierarchy and a kind of vote at the end of the judges in case it doesn't work, right? That's why you have 5-4 decisions and all that stuff. So there's a ton of give in the system and a ton of discretion limited in the sense that the 9 judges can't get their way. But it is a lawmaking instrument, right? It's not just courts. They make law. And so it's the normal separation of powers in the same way that Congress divides, up between all the representatives. We have a form of representative democracy and for the election part. So this is just another way that we're able to make laws, right? So this has been around forever. Now, are they law experts? Not exactly. They're appointed by Congress and the president, right? They're nominated and appointed. So they don't really have to be an expert at anything, right? That depends on if they pass the nomination process, which is supposed to be nonpartisan, blah, 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 but it never is. All right, so let's go back to just this idea here of the arrogance of the Supreme Court and what's going on with that. But here's the fun part, guys. The change that we're seeing with Chevron and with the Democrats attacking the courts after what happened with Trump yesterday is that we're actually seeing what we've been talking about here. And one of the main frames for what Bitcoin is doing, an actual inversion of how money works in connecting with people, in processing information. And it comes down to the inversion of the top-down versus bottom-up format, right? The fiat world requires the top-down format. It needs to have the top-down format. If there is no top-down, the whole pyramid breaks. The whole pyramid scheme of the top-down nature of the US dollar and fiat currencies requires that the money in the top-down structure be supported by experts of all kinds. It's just the actual flow and structure of the money. It made sense at the time, right? I'm going to come back to that. But this is a chart I've been using for a long time. And what I'm trying to say here is that with this pyramid, you see the natural order of the top-down structure, right? So you see money on top. The nodes that must perpetuate this type of money have to coordinate these people in a downward hierarchical structure. So that's why information, energy, banking, all of these places where you find experts in the media are required to be here in this particular subordinate, where the people are subordinate to their expert opinions. If it doesn't work like this, the actual money collapses, right? It has to be in this way. That's what a system of money called fiat, based on government declarations, requires. Otherwise, you need all the people here perpetuating the nodes just in a P2P way with the government. We don't have that relationship with the government. So it's not possible. You need the third-party interlocutors in order to make this happen. And the third parties are indeed the media, the government, the bureaucracy. And if these people don't operate in a coordinated nature, it ain't going to work, right? And that's what we're kind of seeing, right? This is where Sergio says, this is where I want to, this is where I disagree with Ansel. No, I speak with Ansel all the time. So, or used to anyway. So let me tell you what Ansel is saying. Ansel and I are saying the same thing. What Ansel and I are saying is that Bitcoin is not going to run through the plebs, and then every pleb has a wallet and everyone has a little stack of Bitcoin and then revolution. I wish it was going to be that way. That would be the cleanest, nicest way to do it. I believe we're going to get defectors from the system, right? And the defectors will be Wall Street. They'll be the energy companies. They're already the media companies. Look at X. We saw Sony yesterday as a major rights holder and media company talk about opening an exchange. You're going to see more and more media companies switch their financial preference, and energy companies. Media, energy, financial services are going to defect this top-down system just to save their own skin, right? Not because they have a better idea. This thing's got Joe Biden in it. It ain't working for them, right? And we can see it. We'll talk about it in a second, but Marty Bent has a thing on this today about the bond doom loop are getting triggered from this, right? So, and that's, I think, where things are headed. But you can see already, go back to the media company question. Look at X, right? Look at the world we were in just 2 years ago when all the gaslighting was happening, right? You had Jill Biden's former press secretary saying that the White House just does nothing but gaslight its people. We know this now, right? What happened with the debate on Thursday is so different because what we saw was the mask come off. We saw the manipulation. We saw how these people operate, and there's no denying it anymore. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Now, go back to what I said about community notes 2 years ago when that started and what a huge change it was going to be in order for us to get through the gaslighting. Now, look at how quickly people come to conclusions on X. And look at how much better this is than the so-called experts telling you, forget what you saw about Biden. Look what happened, right? You got Bill Ackman, right, who's now, I think, a Trump voter, right, who was the most TDS person 4 years ago. He's helped lead the charge to get all these rich people and Silicon Valley people out of the fiat mindset. I'm telling you, he's going to become a Bitcoiner, right? So he was saying, I'm on X all the time. I'm relaxing. And then Laura Loomer comes out, right? And she has this text. She says, and this is about the Hawk-Tuah girl, right? Everyone's heard about Hawk-Tuah, right? So in it, right, she says the degenerate Hawk-Tuah girl says she's anti-Trump, right? But she didn't watch the video. So Bill comes in, Laura, you got this one wrong. That was the question she was asked. I don't think you can determine her politics from this clip. You might want to review it again. So Laura Loomer, who rushed our stage to question Jack Dorsey in 2021 at Bitcoin Magazine, who someone tried to ban, and I said, you could never ban Laura Loomer. She's the best. We need Laura Loomer on stage at all times. She's hilarious. She comes in and says, I stand corrected, Bill Ackman. Upon further review, it turns out that she was only talking about whether she would perform fellatio on President Trump, right? Her plans for Election Day remain unclear. And she got community noted, justifiably got community noted for not watching the video, right? She was just talking about whether or not she would suck President Trump off, right? Not about voting. So look, it's a small little example, but I'm telling you, this is much more powerful. What just happened here, watching Bill Ackman and Laura Loomer interact, get community noted, right? And now think, this platform is going to have a Bitcoin exchange built into it. That's where we're headed, guys. And it's important because indeed, right, I took the title from today from a rap song, Top Down, screaming out, money ain't a thing, right? With the Ferrari or Jaguar crossing 4 lanes. It was a big song, I don't know, 20 years ago or something like that. I'll never forget that line. I always have said it about Bitcoin, top down, screaming out, money ain't a thing. And indeed, they've lost their rights to the financial system. And you can see what's happening. The Biden thing was such a disaster. It was such a disaster that forget about how American average NPCs are taking it. And they're taking it, I mean, they're actually acknowledging what happens, right? So the NPCs actually having a reaction to it all, right? The NPCs are actually having a reaction. But that's not the important thing. The important thing is the rich foreign audience that has to place bets on the US election through money, right? Because you're being asked to buy debt. You're being asked to bet on the future of America. And again, if the Saudis, if the Japanese, if the Koreans, if the Chinese, if all of them are not interested in perpetuating the top-down US dollar structure where the media and the war machine get all the benefit from perpetuating the dollar around the world through the petrodollar, if that thing breaks, right, why do they have to buy our debt anymore? And Marty is predicting it here. Biden proves to be cognitively impaired, doesn't drop out of the race, bond yields rise as people lose confidence in the US, yen breaks out, Bank of Japan forced to sell bonds, yields go higher. Are we in a bond doom loop right now? I think so. I think you're going to see more and more foreigners make this bet, and I think you're going to have to see more juiced bond buying. Look, the Americans are already subsidizing the Japanese to buy the bonds, and that's what happened last time. And that was before Biden. All right? That was before. So if you think about it from the point of view of what's going on with the media, what's going on with the war machine, what's going on with oil, what's going on with US debt and the dollar, it looks like they're cooked, right? And indeed, Tucker Carlson today predicting Biden is done. He says, bet on it. Too many prominent Democrats have suggested he's brain damaged. They can't walk that back. They have to remove him, and they will. The only question is when. If they're smart, they'll do it immediately. If Kamala is going to be the nominee, she might as well be president first. That leaves the question of Trump and his sentencing on July 11th. Biden's collapse makes this a much more perilous moment than it was. At this point, Trump is not just the Republican candidate, but effectively the presumptive president. If you're going to put him in jail, it had better be for a very serious crime that everyone agrees he committed. Otherwise, you risk destroying the system completely and forever. We're in legitimate danger. Democrats need to pull back. Okay, I don't think they are. I think you're going to hear, and now you're finally hearing. So this is something that Ben said a few days ago, right? Ben's came out and said the conspicuous absence of a letter from the intelligence community on whether Biden should stay or drop out. So what he says here is that the intelligence community not weighing in on what's happening with Biden means that the plan is getting maybe Kennedy-ish. We'll see, right? But from there, you can see that a ton of people, right? We've got the the worse than Watergate guy, worse than Watergate, the two fellas who did Watergate, this is a Scott Adams thing, whenever they get rolled out onto the media, it's just to say, was it worse than Watergate or not? And then of course they always say it was worse than Watergate. This definitely was. I thought I had his quote here. Anyway, basically, and so what you have to know about the worse than Watergate guys is that they're not journalists. Right? They were always CIA people. The people who took down Nixon with Watergate were always in the bag. So if they come on TV, you're getting the response from the actual top-down executive branch cutout that's been running the country forever, since they killed Kennedy at least. And so when Benz comes out and says they're going to be, the conspicuous lack of detail. Now, I disagree with what Benz is saying. A few people did. Scott Adams did as well. I also didn't think, right? Scott Adams says, I think they would want to stay out of the news no matter what they planned or knew. I also think they want Biden to win because that means they call all the shots. Dirty tricks seem inevitable. So I don't know if they want him to win, but they want the dirty tricks, and they're going to have to go with the dirty tricks. So we're in this dirty trick world now, right? This is the false flag world. This is where we're at. This is what Tucker Carlson's predicting. This is what Scott Adams is predicting. This is what I think a lot of people are predicting. You're not going to see anything to do with the deep state saying, oh, we prefer a new president. This one's old. If they get rid of him, it's going to be with a dart and, we're going to have a national mourning period. Now, I predicted last summer that they would have killed Biden by autumn. Remember that? People who are around, I said they're done with him. He's done by autumn. He's going to fall in his sleep. I'm re-predicting that now. I was wrong. It didn't happen in the autumn, but I think that scenario is about to play out. And Scott Adams does have the plan here for what he thinks is going to happen, and it actually makes sense, right? So this is what you're about to see. He says, I just realized Democrats have a plan to run Harris for president without ever showing her in public acting drunk or stupid. Biden will be the technical nominee, but he'll be in hiding as usual. He'll get lots of colds, and he's busy pretending to run the country. The narrative will be that Harris is staying off the campaign trail so she doesn't show him up with her dazzling communication skills. Then the winged monkeys in the media will say, this is all normal and natural. You are only imagining higher prices for groceries. Ukraine is a democracy, and Trump is Hitler's lying taint. And he says, I'd love to tell you it's a bad plan, but it isn't. So his idea here is that, indeed, you're going to get this quasi thing where he's just told to stay home, even though he's on the ballot because they can't switch the ballots or in time, and it's too much of a headache. They're going to say a vote for Biden is a vote for her. And then she's not going to have to talk in public either. So it could work. It could actually work. We'll see if it works, but that's what's going up. Jason says, happy belated Canada Day, Nolan. Another great breakup episode today. Thanks a lot, man. Yeah, I love that song. Kevin says it is a good song. Top down screaming out money ain't a thing. Hope everyone is going to Bitcoin Nashville just a few weeks away. Indeed, Seaberger. We're looking forward to it. We are looking forward to it. Yeah. Democrats pull back, aren't they? Yeah, they're not going to pull back, guys. They're not going to pull back. Yeah, Sergio, the thing with Ansel is I agree with him. There's nuance in it, right? There's nuance in it, but the idea that Bitcoiners will continue, I think this thing where retail overtakes the Wall Street piece, that story's pretty much over, right? That we're done with that. That was a great time and place. It was a great time to be around all these years, to be ahead of Wall Street. Very happy it was us. Very happy we got the chance to do it. None of this would have worked had we not been first. Right? There's just no way we would have been able to bootstrap. There was no reason Wall Street would have had any confidence in Bitcoin if it wasn't for us, the psycho people who do this stuff. So that's a big part of it. But the way it goes in the end, I think in the end, everyone gets on a Bitcoin standard, but we have to go through the toppling of the top-down structure, right? We got to topple this. We got to invert it. We got to turn it around. And the leverage we have to turn it around is right here. I mean, this is what we've got to win, right? We've got to win Wall Street. We've got to win the media. I mean, again, one of the major reasons why I'm getting into the content finance world within Bitcoin and getting into the royalty system and all that is because I fundamentally believe we've got to take over entertainment in order to stop the Star Wars and Disney people from using the fake money and continuing to perpetuate a top-down system. We have no choice but to make Bitcoin content creators richer than fiat content creators in Disney. We have to do that. So that's what we're doing. All right, guys, that's all I got for today. I got a bit of a busy day, so I shall see you all tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow again. I'll see. I'm back in the country with the kids' camp, so we'll see what's going on. I'll give you a note in the morning if there's a show or no show. Again, things are going to be a little sketchy for most of July. All right, team. Peace.